Hey guys, what's going on? It's Tyler, leader of the Reclamation Party. So, I'm going to talk about today a couple quick things. Mostly got to do with the platforms as well as the direction of the Liberal and Conservative Party right now. So, basically, obviously, some of you have noticed there's been a shift in the Conservative Party since Pierre Poilievre took over. Can't say that's a good one. Long story short. But a major thing that I personally am getting extremely tired of, the whole reason why we started the Reclamation Party to begin with, is because the people in politics right now feel the need to lie to taxpayers. And if they don't want to call it lying, they'll call it a mild deception, I guess. It's lying, and they're full of crap. Okay, so the prime example I'm going to provide today is if you go and look at the Conservative platform, their budgeted platform. Okay, so what do I mean by they're lying to Canadians? Well, to start with is the tax cuts. Okay, so he told you Pierre Poilievre said 15% off your taxes. When that came out, I made it abundantly clear to anyone who watches my videos, 15% off of 15%, bringing you down to about 12.75, I believe, off the top of my head. So really a 2.25% tax cut. Not a lot, only the bottom bracket. Now, it turns out that with the costed platform, why it was released so late is because, quite frankly, and they're basically, without calling him directly a liar, basically makes him out to be a bit of a liar. Okay, you aren't getting that tax cut, at least not anytime soon. So you're getting it in the same way like a union agreement gives us a pay increase. So you're getting it over a 4-year period, and it'll be 0.75 per year. Yeah. So I'm sure for many people who don't have time to read the cost of platform, aren't invested in politics like I am, obviously, this would be a major surprise. Is where's our 15% off tax cut? Off taxes. I thought you were going to make work pay again. Yeah, you wouldn't see it until the start of next year. 0.75 off. So you'd still be at 14.25% taxes on the lowest bracket. Yeah. So remember, he said he's going to save you $1,800. In reality, it'd save you $300. Yeah. This is the problem. Frankly, it upsets me. I try really to keep a positive tone as much as I can with politics because it can so easily become such a down thing. This is the problem. Is you'd have nobody in politics right now that's going to tell you as a taxpayer the truth. And the truth is that no one has invested in our country in a large way for decades. It's a problem. Our military is a prime example I simply cannot let go of, and I refuse to, because those men and women deserve better than what we're doing to them. Okay, we lost 10%. 10% of all of the Canadian Armed Forces recruits quit. Why? Because we couldn't get them into basic training in less than 250 days. Yeah, 250 days to see them actually go to basic training and to start to make money. So they signed a contract. We didn't keep up our end of the bargain. Okay? This wasn't a 30 to 80 day wait like in most countries for military training. 250 days, 10% of all recruits quit last year. Now, 10% is not a massive amount, let's say, but it's not nothing. And I'm sure but the tip of the spear, because we're also losing more than we're taking in. This is a huge problem, and politicians are going to tell you that they're going to solve this problem by giving a little more money or by, defending our sovereignty with words. It is cheap horse, you know what, okay? It is. Just like the tax cuts and just like everything else that both parties are doing. You got Mark Carney, who's ran on elbows up and basically under the table has lowered all the tariffs through exemptions, the counter tariffs to nothing. No, I'm for that. I'm against the counter tariffs. They were stupid, frankly. Okay, they didn't do anything. Instead, you want an example that I saw the other day personally. A box of Kool-Aid Jammers went from, they used to be $2. basically, before tax, to $5 before tax. And there's a T on the label there for tariff. It's insane. To what end? We're tariffing school snacks because, yeah, you can buy a different juice from somewhere else. Fair enough. But why are we doing it to Canadians' pocketbooks when they already can't afford to pay for much of anything as it is? It's nuts. And this is the problem, is all the politicians have a disconnect. Okay? Poilievre has been in politics his whole life. He's never worked for a real paycheck. So he doesn't understand the struggles of being taxed at what everybody else is being taxed at. Just like he doesn't understand that giving an incremental tax break in the way that he's doing it is a complete farce compared to what people expect they're getting. Okay, it's ridiculous. It's offensive, and it's dishonest. Like, completely disingenuous. It is a trick, a lie. It is absolute hogwash. And yet they're now in the Conservative caucus talking about getting rid of his campaign manager. Yes, she ran the campaign for Stephen Harper in 2015, in which he got absolutely bulldozed by Justin Trudeau. Yes, she ran the campaign for Pierre Poilievre right now, and he basically got every Conservative vote that you can get, and he still lost. So I'm sure there's blame to be put on her. But let's make it abundantly clear that Poilievre lost due to his personality. Okay? This is not a guy who came off as honest. This is not a guy who came off as likable. His family came off as very cold. This is all things that Canadians noticed. Okay? The entire campaign, was it awful? Yeah. It was awful. It was. It was a foolish campaign run by somebody who obviously has no connection to the regular Canadian voter. Or she would have smelled the blood in the water when it began to flow. Okay? Just as Justin Trudeau resigned. And instead she didn't. So there's a bit of blame to go around, certainly. But this endless nonsense, like Mark Carney now is, again, the counter tariffs are off, and he talked big on oil and gas, but at the day's end, he's one stage off the Green Party with radical stuff about energy. I grow very tired of this discussion, this idea that the entire oil industry is going to collapse tomorrow. Sorry about that, my wife needed something quick. But, so to continue, the idea that the oil and gas companies are simply going to go belly up tomorrow, or that we're at the end of the era of petroleum products. I can't find any true evidence of that in the facts of the data, okay? We have yet to peak on consumption, and frankly, the date for finalization of the idea, right, the speculative date of peaking, gets pushed back nearly every 5 years. Every 5 years, we think we got the number, okay? And it just doesn't happen. Because we aren't there yet. The simple fact is that green energy, okay, it depends on how you want to calculate it, okay? If you want to calculate it including hydro energy, which I think is the right way to go about it, in some areas we're in the 30% of the grid or more is green. But if you're simply going off of things like solar and wind, as an example, and you're taking out hydroelectric dams, because there is some controversy with hydroelectric dams, depending on the waterway, right? Then we're talking in the range of 2 to 5% of the grid. Even that's current today. 2 to 5% of the grid, if you take out hydroelectric dams, is solar and wind. And that's with everything we have now. Now, depending on where you are in the country, that may or may not surprise you. But in some parts of the country where we have windmills all over the place and there's solar on just about every other home, depending on the area, so on and so forth, you're probably a little surprised that that's all it is. But despite the hundreds of millions of dollars spent by the Fed, that is all that it is. We are decades away, in reality, from pure green energy that doesn't involve hydroelectric dams, because there's not a lot of hydroelectric dam projects being approved. They are now a real super project rarity, I guess would be how I would classify it, because of the environmental impacts, the long-term environmental impacts, and the concerns, certainly by local and Indigenous people, about the effects on the waterways with these dams. Now, technology's improved. I think that the moving forward into the decades to come, hydroelectric certainly has its place and it should not be ignored. Just like nuclear, okay? But just like nuclear, there's problems with it that don't make it so cut and dry and simple. So this idea that the petroleum age is over, it's not the facts. I'm sorry, I understand there'll be people who will even say, hey, the scientific community disagrees with you to a degree. Yes, but their opinion consistently changes every 5-ish years. Okay, we were told that the peak would already be happening, 2025. If you go back 10 to 15 years ago, okay, you're going to be told that the petroleum peak was to happen in 2024, 2025, right? Because these were far off dates. They, decades of advancement. And yet here we are, okay, May 2025. And still, for an example, Alberta has coal burning plants. Most of the USA has coal burning plants. Germany reopened coal burning plants because we need them. Because energy hunger, especially with the AI age coming in, has only gotten worse. But the efficiencies of our solar systems, for an example, have not increased by a magnitude of 20. Sure, they've increased by a magnitude of 3, perhaps, maybe even more, but nowhere near efficiency. And anyone who's going to, or efficiency enough to cover the grid's needs. So anybody who's going to tell you otherwise, though, is simply lying to you. And unfortunately, Mark Carney is in that boat. And that's why I've gone on this spiel. Okay? Mark Carney believes that the petroleum age is over. Mark Carney's wrong. Okay? And I'm sorry, Mark Carney's also like 60 years old. 50, 60 years old. Okay? I'm 30. The petroleum age isn't going anywhere. Me and my children, okay, my oldest being 12, we're right in the middle of who will see the long-term impacts, as well as Mark Carney's kids, obviously, Pierre Poilievre's kids, that will see the long-term effects of whether or not the green energy revolution is a real thing or something we've spent our tax dollars on pointlessly. Those are the two sides. My opinion is that it is a real thing, but that it isn't a fast turnaround thing, okay? This is something that will take decades, if not the better part of this century, especially if you want to throw nuclear in as a bad energy supply, okay? Ontario and Canada across the board are looking at small modular reactors. Out west, they're having huge problems with the shift in population that has caused their grid to have massive problems. Again, my brother lives out in Alberta. They were having rolling blackouts during the heat of summer for the grid. We've had similar problems here in Ontario. Across the country, okay, the population has increased vastly, especially in Ontario, Alberta, BC, Quebec to a degree. So the grid's not prepared to handle all these people, but our answers aren't quick. Our answers are decades long with some of these green projects or unproven, unfunded, not designs so much as ideas, initiatives that don't actually lead to anything of value in the long term. We need long-term real solutions, and we should be spending taxpayer dollars on that. Now, does that mean we fire up a coal plant in every province? No. No, it doesn't. I don't want to see coal plants burning again in Ontario personally, but we need to be realistic that we cannot federally block projects without having real discussions with the province. Okay, these are projects that are affecting the province in question in particular, and sometimes the national grid. We also need to work harder on a national grid outside of the United States. We're tied in together really bad. Okay, east to west. So they go down, we go down. That should not be the case. We should be able to separate ourselves as a grid completely from the United States. That's real sovereignty and independence, okay? Not what we have now. So, again, kind of circling back, we really need we need politicians to start telling the truth. This is why I'm doing this. I am not claiming to be a banker or a career politician. I'm claiming to be a passionate, knowledgeable guy who claims to be competent at finding the right people for the right job. Okay, putting people in those positions where they know what they're talking about, they know what they're doing. And if they don't, we will get rid of them and put in someone who will. But I am sick and tired of seeing politicians like Mark Carney now, a banker, who can barely talk and tell the truth in front of the camera. Let's be honest here. There are things about Mark Carney I really like. His resume in particular, as someone in the middle voting position, a centrist. I like his resume. But we've had bankers before. And it never led to anything out of the ordinary. The ordinary needs to stop. Okay? We need to stop lying to taxpayers that we're going to give tax breaks, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then we do things like the conservative platform and stretch it out over years and years so we still get all this revenue. Okay? Because that's an area as well I got to poke at Pierre Poilievre, where he said no tariff revenue will go into the federal coffers, and his own plan, his costed platform, says otherwise. Yeah. So he had $74 billion. I could be incorrect on that number. Feel free to correct me. I feel like it's $77 billion over 4 years of cuts to programs. It says it, programs, initiatives, and I believe streamlining government. So $70 billion. Just to be clear, we need about 20 to reach NATO's 2%. So he could solve all of our problems with pixie dust. Because where are you getting $70 billion from when you've promised you aren't going to cut the healthcare, including the programs that are put in by the Liberals and the NDP? You're not going to cut any of that. He said that. His own words, not mine. His. You're only lowering taxes by 2.25%. Which in the grand scheme of revenue for the Fed, just on the lowest tax bracket, that's not actually that much, guys. Yeah, it's a couple $1 billion. We're a $2 trillion economy. Trillion, not billion. So he's not saving a lot of money here, okay? Not so much that it's bankrupting the government. It's not what's going on, okay? Then, no real investments in the military. He didn't put that either. And the list goes on. Look at the conservative costing platform. And you're going to find that he said a lot of things, and they're in there, just not how he said they would be. That's a huge problem. That's not right, and it needs to stop, okay? And same with the Liberals, that Mark Carney's pro-pipeline. He's going to do all these things. He's going to push forward with oil and gas and whatever Canadians want. And yet he put in some of the most anti-pipeline, pro-green energy project ministers imaginable. And some of them aren't even in the realm of energy. And they're still talking about how we aren't interested in building a pipeline and how it's not a government that builds a pipeline. You all know the clip I'm talking about if you watch politics regularly. Excuse me. So the misinformation and the lack of a budget, I'm sorry, I can't believe I almost forgot that one. The lack of a liberal budget, unacceptable. It's unacceptable. How are you going to come in and tell us you can't give us a budget by the fall? And why are we going on a break? Summer vacation shouldn't be occurring, right? Because the entire parliament's been shut down. And now we're ready to run away for spring break? I'm sorry, if I was Prime Minister, that wouldn't be going on. I would do everything in my power to make sure that we actually operated all summer. In fact, I'd go a step further right now, frankly, folks, and I'd tell you, 110%, I would do everything I could to more or less limit spring break for Parliament. In my opinion, parliamentarians should only get 1 to 2 weeks, Christmas, and 1 month in the summer. Nothing else. They don't need anything else. They are the second highest paid politicians on earth. So they get enough money and they get enough perks that they don't need half the year off. Yet they basically work about half the year if you take in all the time off they get. Yes, it's in a public setting. Yes, you can watch Parliament live and everything else. So there are cons to be certain. But for $200,000, $150,000 a year, I'm pretty sure most people would find themselves willing to handle that. So changes need to happen. And if we want to see these changes occur, if we want to see actual change occur in the country that we all want to live in, we all want to see this, in my opinion. I really feel that. The conservative base, even the liberal base, together for once. The NDP has been wiped off the map. The Bloc only exists out of spite, frankly. If we can actually come together in the center, new party, okay, new leadership, real change, not this conservative hogwash change of 4 years to cut your taxes by 2%, okay, actual change. I'm talking about cutting your taxes 5% across the board. Completely revitalize our military. Okay, build rail and road infrastructure across the country. Work with provinces and territories to actually do that stuff. If we actually want change, we can do it, but we have to spend the money. We are going to run large deficits. Anyone who tells you that they are not fixing the problems. I'm sorry, sometimes your money has to go where your mouth is. And right now, we have spent decades underinvesting while saying we're not. And our military is a prime example. Our home, if that's what you want to look at it all as, is as a home, the army and everything, all together, pretty decrepit. There's been a lot of underinvesting. Roof's leaky, crack in the foundation. We have big work to do, but it's going to take money. And that is the conversation Canadians need to be having over the next coming years, is are we prepared to make that investment? Are we prepared to fix our problems for the long run? Yes, it will add on to the debt. Yes, that is a problem we have to deal with. But we have problems right now. What happens if we have to deal with the debt and these existing ones because we've kicked the can down? A lot of people want to talk about being concerned when it comes to the debt for our children. But what happens if we have a lack of action? Because the debt's not going anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. And anyone who tells you that it is lying to you. It simply isn't. That is not the world we live in. No amount of balancing the budget for the next 20 to 30 years will get rid of our debt. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try. But let's be realistic. And let's be honest. If we're going to run the debt, we're going to fix the crack in the foundation, we're going to completely redo the roof and put on a brand new spanky good one, we need to do that. And we need to be honest about the cost. And we need to be straightforward. Okay? No more of this tax cuts that take 4 years to roll out, heavy spending while fudging numbers, or Mark Carney hiding numbers, pulling who knows what level of banking nonsense. Let's get regular people in. Passionate people, people with an education in certain areas that they should have it, okay? And let's push competency, not common sense. I hate that slogan. Competency before anything else. Let's bring competency back to government, competency back to how we manage the books and how we manage everything else, and let's put our best foot forward and prioritize what we need to, okay? It's been a bit of a longer one. As you can tell, I'm a little irritated with how this has all gone. Okay, I had low expectations, but man, are they just, it's awful. It's awful. The simple fact that Mark Carney could go down there and meet with Donald Trump, and it wasn't even this, that, or anything. The fact that they seemed very personal bothered me somewhat. Because for those who weren't aware or didn't watch, it wasn't Mr. Prime Minister, it wasn't Mr. Carney. It was Mark. From the moment he was in the room, Mark. It wasn't Mr. Trump, wasn't Mr. President. Well, there was a couple of Mr. Presidents. But besides that, it was Donald. Or Mr. President. So Mark Carney and Donald Trump, in my opinion, if not publicly already, do have history. We probably should have been told about that. All right? You guys have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.